Job had no idea. He's sitting in ashes, scraping open sores with a piece of broken pottery. His children are dead, his wealth is gone, his health has collapsed. His wife looks at him and says, "Just curse God and die." And somewhere in the middle of all of that, the silence, the pain, the questions with no answers, Job had absolutely no idea what was happening in the room above his suffering. He didn't know that before the first thing went wrong in his life, there was a conversation in heaven about him specifically, that God himself had pointed to Job and said, "Have you considered my servant?" He didn't know that what was happening to him was being watched not with indifference, but with purpose. He didn't know that his suffering was echoing in dimensions he couldn't see, proving something that would be written down and read for thousands of years. Job knew his circumstances. He did not know his story, and neither do you right now, in whatever season you're carrying. What I want to do in this video is pull back the curtain. 3 times in the Bible, God lets us see behind the visible into what is actually happening in the spiritual realm, while people on earth are enduring their worst seasons. And what's there changes everything about how you understand what you're going through right now. Before we go in, I need to say something important. The Bible doesn't pull back this curtain very often. Most of the time, the spiritual realm stays invisible by design. We walk by faith, not by sight. But in a handful of passages, God gives us a rare, extraordinary glimpse of what is happening on the other side of what we can see. 3 of those passages are what this entire video is built on. And I want to be clear. These are not metaphors. These are not feel-good illustrations. These are literal, recorded moments in Scripture where the veil got thin enough for someone to see through. What they show us will either comfort you deeply or unsettle you completely, possibly both at the same time. Let's start at the beginning. Job chapter 1, verse 6. Now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and the adversary also came among them. What you just read is the opening of a scene in heaven. A divine council, God seated, surrounded by heavenly beings, and among them the adversary arrives. And God, in what is one of the most startling verses in all of Scripture, speaks first. "Have you considered my servant Job?" Read that again. God initiates. God points. God says, "Look at this man." The adversary's response is essentially an accusation. Job only serves you because you've protected him. He only loves you because you've blessed him. Take it away, and he'll curse you to your face. And God says, test it. Now hold on, because this is the part that is deeply uncomfortable and absolutely essential to understand. Job had no idea this conversation happened. Not when his servants came running to say the oxen were stolen. Not when the fire fell and burned up his sheep. Not when the messenger arrived to say the house had collapsed on his children. Not on day 1, day 30, or day 300 of his suffering. He sat in those ashes with every legitimate question a human being can ask. Why? What did I do? Where are you? And he had no access to the scene that had taken place before the first thing went wrong. Here is what this means for you. There are conversations happening about you right now that you cannot hear. There are purposes being worked out through your circumstances that you have no framework to see from inside them. The God who looked at Job and said, "Have you considered my servant?" is the same God who knows your name, knows your season, and has allowed what you're going through with a purpose that extends far beyond what your circumstances look like from the ground. But there's something else in the Job story that most people miss entirely. After everything Job loses, after the ashes, after the sores, after his friends spend 37 chapters telling him he must have sinned to deserve this, God speaks. And what does he say about Job? Not to Job, about Job. Job nedvenket du hate, God says to Eliphaz, one of the friends who had all the answers. My anger burns against you and against your 2 friends, for you have not spoken of me what is right, as my servant Job has. The friends who had the tidy theology and the correct answers, God was angry with them. Job, who screamed at the sky, who demanded an audience, who said things in raw grief that would make most Christians uncomfortable, Job spoke what was right. And here is the detail that will stay with you. The adversary disappears from the book after chapter 2. Completely. He makes his accusation, God permits the test, and then he is never mentioned again. He didn't finish the story. He was only in it long enough to set it in motion. Whatever the adversary intends in your worst season, he doesn't write the ending. He never has. That's the first scene. A heavenly council meeting about an ordinary man that he never knew happened, and a story whose ending the adversary was never allowed to finish. The second scene pulls the curtain back even further. Daniel chapter 10. Daniel is in Babylon. He has been fasting and praying for 21 days, 3 weeks of mourning, with no answer, no sign, no word. He's praying for his people, for Israel, for understanding. And the silence on the other end has been absolute. Then a figure appears by the Tigris River described with awe-inspiring detail. A being so radiant that the men with Daniel fled in terror even though they couldn't see him. And this figure speaks, verse 12, "Do not be afraid, Daniel. From the first day that you set your heart to understand and humbled yourself before your God, your words were heard, and I have come because of your words." Stop there. From the first day, God heard Daniel's prayer on day 1. The answer was dispatched on day 1, verse 13. But the prince of the kingdom of Persia withstood me 21 days, and Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me, for I was left there with the kings of Persia. There is a war that Daniel cannot see happening in the spiritual realm, directly above the region where he is praying. A demonic territorial power described as the Prince of Persia, a fallen angelic being assigned to obstruct, has been blocking the messenger for the entire length of Daniel's fast. For 21 days there has been a battle. Not because God wasn't listening, not because the answer wasn't coming, but because between Daniel's prayer and Daniel's answer there is a spiritual realm with real conflict in it. The messenger then says something extraordinary. I must return to fight against the Prince of Persia, and when I go, the Prince of Greece will come. The battle doesn't end when Daniel gets his answer. It continues. There are wars being waged in dimensions Daniel will never see, involving kingdoms he lives inside, on behalf of purposes larger than his personal circumstances. And here is what this means practically. When you have been praying genuinely, persistently, faithfully, and the silence goes on for days, weeks, months, you are not being ignored. You are not forgotten. The answer to your prayer may have been dispatched the same day you asked. What you are experiencing as silence may be, in the unseen realm, the most contested ground in a war you are not equipped to see. Daniel's fast wasn't pointless. It was the fuel. The angel said, I have come because of your words. The 21 days of prayer weren't waiting for God to notice. They were corresponding, in ways Daniel couldn't see, to a 2 one-day battle being fought on his behalf in the spiritual realm. Now consider this carefully. Daniel did not know any of this was happening while it was happening. He sat in his fast day 8, day 14, day 19, with no evidence that anything was responding. From the visible, it looked like silence. From the invisible, it was war. When you feel like your prayers are hitting the ceiling, they are not. The ceiling isn't there. They are going somewhere. Something is happening. You just can't see it. Job didn't know about the council meeting. Daniel didn't know about the battle. But the third scene is the one that I think about the most because it's the one that reveals not just what's happening around you, but what's standing right beside you in the moment you feel most alone. 2 Kings, chapter 6. Elisha the prophet has been supernaturally revealing the plans of the king of Aram to the king of Israel, hearing the enemy's strategies in the spiritual realm and passing them along. The king of Aram discovers this and sends an entire army, horses, chariots, a massive military force to surround the small city of Dothan by night and capture Elisha. The servant of Elisha wakes up early, goes outside, and sees the army surrounding the city. Verse 15. Alas, my master, what shall we do? This is reasonable. This is the only sane response to waking up to find yourself surrounded by an army. The servant sees what is visible, and what is visible is catastrophic. Elisha's response is one of the most startling sentences in the Old Testament. Verse 16. Do not be afraid, for those who are with us are more than those who are with them. The servant can only see the Aramean army. Elisha, apparently, can see something else. And then Elisha prays not for rescue, not for the army to be destroyed, not for a miracle of escape. He prays for one thing. Verse 17. O Lord, please open his eyes, that he may see. And the Lord opened the eyes of the young man, and he saw, and behold, the mountain was full of horses, and chariots of fire all around Elisha. The divine army was already there, before Elisha prayed, before the servant saw them, before Elisha even knew the Aramean army had arrived. The horses and chariots of fire were on the mountain before the servant woke up that morning. They did not appear in response to the prayer. The prayer opened the servant's eyes to what was already present. What changed was not the situation. What changed was what the servant could see. Here is the thing that this passage does to every other passage in the Bible. If there were angels surrounding one prophet in one small town, in one moment of ancient history, you have to take seriously the possibility that the protection and presence of God around your life is not absent simply because you can't see it. The servant of Elisha was panicking at the very moment divine armies were surrounding him on every side. His fear was completely understandable. His fear was also completely based on incomplete information. You are looking at your circumstances from one dimension, the dimension you live in. And from that dimension, what you can see may be genuinely terrifying. But the dimension you cannot see, the one that Job didn't know about, that Daniel couldn't see, that Elisha's servant could only glimpse after prayer, that dimension is more real, not less. It is not the spiritual world that is secondary to the physical world. It is the other way around. The Apostle Paul, who understood suffering from the inside, shipwrecked, beaten, imprisoned, abandoned, writes in 2 Corinthians 4:17, 1:8. For this light momentary affliction is preparing for us an eternal weight of glory beyond all comparison, as we look not to the things that are seen, but to the things that are unseen. For the things that are seen are transient, but the things that are unseen are eternal. The things that are seen are transient. The things that are unseen are eternal. Your worst season is being witnessed